from the Scott Wesleyan Cathedral right here in my own home. You can catch these messages, and usually my good friend Steve Beverly, who does some editing on them, he'll have them a lot of times even late Saturday night, but usually most of the time Sunday morning, and then they are available on Facebook and YouTube. I think if you do a search on YouTube, just type in Sundays with Brother Barry or Brother Barry Scott, you can find them. And on Facebook, you can always go to my page, just Barry Neal Scott. If you're not a Facebook friend, be glad to send me a request. I'm glad to befriend everybody, but more importantly, I appreciate you listening. All right, this morning we're going back in the Old Testament, a story that I think a lot of people at least know a little about. It is the story of Jacob's ladder, and the sermon title, The Ladder of God. And this is found in the book of Genesis. I'm going to read chapter 28, verses 10 through 19. It concerns Jacob, and we will then look and see some of the truths that I think jump out at us from this story. Genesis 28, verse 10 and down through verse 19. Jacob left Beersheba and set out to Haran. When he reached a certain place, he stopped for the night because the sun had set. Taking one of the stones there, he put it under his head and lay down to sleep. He had a dream in which he saw a ladder, or a stairway, resting on the earth with its top reaching to heaven, and the angels of God were ascending and descending on it. There above it stood the Lord, and he said, I am the Lord, the God of your father Abraham and the God of Isaac. I will give you and your descendants the land on which you are lying. Your descendants will be like the dust of the earth, and you will spread out to the west and to the east, to the north and to the south. All peoples on earth will be blessed through you and your offspring. I am with you and will watch over you wherever you go, and I will bring you back to this land. I will not leave until I have done what I have promised you. When Jacob awoke from his sleep, he thought, surely the Lord is in this place, and I was not aware of it. He was afraid and said, how awesome is this place? This is none other than the house of God. This is the gate of heaven. Early the next morning, Jacob took the stone he had placed under his head and set it up as a pillar and poured oil on top of it. He called the place Bethel, though the city used to be called Luz. Two little boys were talking, and one mentioned his dad was in the hospital. Why is your dad in the hospital? His little friend asked. My dad was on the roof, the little boy said. Well, what does that have to do with him being in the hospital? Well, the little boy said, my dad tried to come down about 1 minute after my uncle had moved the ladder. The ladder is a most useful invention. It really has two great purposes, to get us up or get us down, but I believe the emphasis is on getting up. It's to connect the lower to the higher. I suspect that the ladder, and whatever form it comes in, a ladder was invented because of someone's need to climb up. Now, the second great purpose in ladders is for a rescue situation. A ladder is of no use if it will not reach what you need to reach, and even the longest ladders have their limits. If you look at ladders that are used in firefighting, this is some of the statistics, dimensions I found on that. An aerial ladder can go up to 100 feet, or that would be about 8 stories. A snorkel truck has a ladder that can ascend about 150 feet or up to 12 floors, and the longest ladders are actually used at sea, And there are some of those that can be extended 320 feet into the air. Now, of all the ladders, Jacob's ladder is certainly the most famous, and it is the greatest, for it spanned heaven and earth. Now, it may be more accurate to think of what we've always called Jacob's ladder as being a great stairway, but the symbolism is the same. The ladder was a visible symbol of the real, uninterrupted fellowship between God in heaven and his people on earth. The angels ascend to present men's needs before God, and they descend with the promises of divine assistance and protection. The story is known as Jacob's ladder, but now more accurate, we should call it the ladder of God. You see, the ladder of God was provided by God. And in thinking of this, think more of like a garage or an attic ladder that you pull down, that comes down from above. The ladder of God reaches all the way from heaven to earth and back again. It came down from God's initiative, God's gift to Jacob. Jacob sees a great vision, and he hears a great promise. The vision wasn't staged simply for Jacob's benefit. It wasn't some special effect that God whipped up just to impress Jacob. No, God was literally pulling back the curtain, showing Jacob the divine activity going on all the time. All those angels were on assignment, going back and forth to the earth to guide and lead God's people, minister to them, camp around them, warn them, protect them, guard them, provide for their needs. And that ladder is still there. And those angels have not aged a single hour since Jacob first saw them. In fact, they're still working and ministering on our behalf today. God was giving Jacob a promise. Verse 15, I am with you and will watch over you wherever you go, and I will bring you back to the land. I will not leave you until I have done what I have promised you. I'll never leave you, Jacob. I'll be with you every step of the way. You can never make a move I won't be involved in, and through it all, I'm going to bring you into my eternal purpose for your life. My purpose will be accomplished in you, no matter what. Now, Jacob really was unworthy of his dream. If you know the story of Jacob, and to some degree, he really could be called a scoundrel, a cheater. He wasn't very religious. He's an exile wandering in the wilderness. He feels guilty in his conscience. He's stolen his brother's blessing, and he doesn't feel blessed. Jacob was heir to the covenant, but his life was empty of a relationship with God. His dream's really a wake-up call. Few people ever needed to wake up to God more than Jacob in the Old Testament. God came to Jacob, not Jacob to God. God's ladder spanned a gulf Jacob could not. The gap was bridged by God coming down, and specifically coming down to us in Christ. Even though Jacob didn't have time for God, God had lots of time for Jacob. Even though Jacob had no care for God, God had lots of care for him. Even though Jacob was busy and running from everyone, God included, God didn't allow him to get away. God doesn't leave him alone. God doesn't play a game of hide and seek. God doesn't leave Jacob to wander about and eventually try and stumble across whatever form of satisfaction in life he can find. God himself comes to Jacob. I am with you and will watch over you wherever you go, and I'll bring you back to this land. Wow. Can you imagine? This isn't just some momentary contact. It isn't just a fleeting glimpse into the world beyond. This is God himself promising to accompany Jacob as an unseen guide and guest through every future moment of his life. Wow. This is the greatest guarantee of security that a person could ever hope for. God and Jacob, forever partners. The ladder of God is sufficient. Verse 12. Jacob had a dream when she saw a ladder resting on the earth with its top reaching to heaven, and the angel of God were ascending and descending on it. If this ladder wasn't under construction, it wasn't halfway, it was all the way. Jacob saw that there was a way all the way up to God himself. Not only that, he was given the assurance that God was with him. All other ladders are not sufficient. Sin, when you think about it, is having too short of a ladder. It's to realize your ladder doesn't reach the top. Sometimes we use that as an expression. Consider the failed attempt of the Tower of Babel. They were going to build a great tower that stretched all the way up to heaven. You see the outcome of that. People have always tried to build their own ladders. But remember now, a ladder's not effective unless it reaches its destination. And that reminds me, a number of years ago when I was at East Trinity Church in Jackson, our church bought a van. I believe it was a 12-passenger, and we started a senior citizens group. We had several senior citizens, as most churches do. We were having a great time, going lots of places, and I decided it would be a great idea to take our senior citizens group to Nashville right around the holidays, the Christmas, New Year's season, to the great Opryland Hotel. And it's, back then it's not as big as it is now. They've added some, but at that time, really, the thing you wanted to see the most were the famous dancing waters. Now, when we got there, I mean, literally, it was just shoulder to shoulder people. So many people, even though we tried to get there early, couldn't hardly even see the dancing waters. And I looked around and I saw up above there was a balcony, and it didn't seem to have many people on it. And I thought, that's what we need to do. So I said to this group of senior citizens, hey guys, follow me. And so we started up the stairs, one flight, two flights. Now you got to remember these were senior citizens, and they don't necessarily do stairs that great anyways, but they dutifully followed. The third floor, got up only to find that we were at a dead end. You couldn't see anything, and had to come back down. I don't know, may still be 2 or 3 of them up there to this day. Not sure. We speak of getting to the top of the ladder, climbing the rungs of success. It's a famous story about Claude the caterpillar. Claude the caterpillar noticed that there was a painted stick, and it was surrounded by caterpillars at the base, and he looked and there were caterpillars going all the way up the stick. And he thought, okay, that must be the purpose of a caterpillar. You need to get to the top of the stick, be the highest caterpillar. So he started climbing, fighting, climbing over other caterpillars, knocking some off. Finally, Claude the caterpillar reached his goal. He got to the very top of the stick, only to look out across the garden to see that there were dozens of other painted sticks all being climbed by caterpillars, going absolutely nowhere. Listen, spiritually, people are climbing a lot of painted sticks, so to speak. Climbing ladders don't really go anywhere. The ladders of success, wealth, fame, power, accumulation. Jacob had been climbing a ladder of his own making. The truth is, all of our ways of getting to God fall short, and they actually fail to help us reach God. That's why the ladder of God is a rescue ladder. Jacob was in need of a rescue, and God came to his rescue. Our Jacob's ladder is really the cross of Jesus. God sent his son on a rescue mission. We needed someone to come and rescue us. In 1930, the King of England was going to make a worldwide address, a speech with the subject of peace. It was delivered from the London Naval Conference. Now, the CBS station, the main station in New York City, was where this broadcast was coming, and so it could also be broadcast across the United States. Now, nothing like this had ever been attempted, it happened before. Just as the king was going to speak, and you were going to hear this live broadcast in the United States, they noticed that there was a problem. One of the wires was loose. There was a young technician named Walter Vivian. He realized the problem. He realized that nobody in the United States was going to be able to hear the King of England. And so he, with his hands, he got one end of the wire, took the other end of the wire, and let the electricity flow through him. In fact, he held on for the entire speech of the King of England. Afterwards, it was noted that his hands were red and burned from holding those live wires, but the king's broadcast had gone through. Somehow, through our sin, the circuits between God and man were shattered. It would be a costly business to restore the broken connection. But I see the Son of God step into the breach and in his own body take the shock of the iniquity of us all. And his hands still bear the mark of it even to this day. But we know that the King's message of peace gets through to a waiting world through Jesus. The cross is the ladder of God for the rescue of sinful humanity. Years ago, also in England, it was a retired sailor's home. It was located in Liverpool. It caught on fire. There was a man that was trapped in a top window. They reached a ladder up, but it was about 6 feet short. It looked like the man was going to be lost, but a brave fireman climbed the ladder to the very top, got to the top of the ladder, and reached out, grabbed hold of the ledge, and that old gentleman who was about to perish in the fire was able to climb down his body and then onto the ladder and back down to safety. And the headlines in the English newspapers had this: ladder plus a man's body saves the day. Listen, the cross plus the Christ of the cross, the means of our salvation. Heaven and earth have been permanently connected by a man on a cross. The ladder of God is ascended by faith. Jacob's dream awakened his faith. Verse 16, 17. When Jacob awoke from his sleep, he thought, surely the Lord is in this place. I wasn't aware of it. He was afraid and said, how awesome is this place? This is none other than the house of God. This is the gate of heaven. Awakened faith opens our spiritual eyes to the reality of God's presence and his love for us. You ever seen a sign that says handicapped accessible? Listen, heaven is handicapped accessible. There's no way we could climb there on our own, but God has provided a way. Our faith is assisted by his mighty power, and he lifts us up to heaven. Now, in the hymnal that was in most of my churches during my preaching career, the Methodist hymnal, there are actually 2 songs that draw their inspiration from this particular story of Jacob's ladder. One immediately comes to mind: we are climbing Jacob's ladder. But the other may surprise you. It was 528 in the hymn book. Nearer, my God, to thee. This is what they were reportedly, the band was playing with the Titanic saying. But listen to the words in light of the story of Jacob's ladder. Nearer, my God, to thee, nearer to thee, even though it be a cross that raises me, still all my song shall be, nearer, my God, to thee, nearer, my God, to thee. Nearer to thee, though like the wanderer the sun gone down, darkness be over me, my rest a stone, yet in my dreams I be nearer, my God, to thee. There let the way appear, steps unto heaven, all that thou sendest me in mercy given. Angels to beckon me nearer, my God, to thee. Then with my waking thoughts bright with thy praise, out of my stony griefs Bethel I'll raise, so by my woes to be nearer, my God, to thee. Or if on joyful wing cleaving the sky, sun, moon, and stars forgot, upward I'll fly. Still all my song shall be nearer, my God, to thee. There in my Father's home, safe and at rest, there in my Savior's love, perfectly blessed, age after age to be nearer, my God, to thee. Last thought I'd like to share with you. The ladder of God leads through and to Jesus. Jacob named that place Bethel, house of God, for he found himself at the gate to heaven. The promise to Jacob is a promise to everyone. Interesting, Jesus himself referred to Jacob's ladder in John chapter 1 verse 51. He meets a man named Nathaniel, and Nathaniel is seeking a deeper relationship with Christ. And Jesus says to him, to Nathaniel, I tell you the truth, you shall see heaven open and the angels of God ascending and descending on the Son of Man. In other words, Nathaniel, your search is over. What you've been thirsting for, what you've been looking for, heaven has touched down. It's made contact with the earth. They're now linked, and you're standing at the point of contact, and that point of contact is me. And Nathaniel believes, he confesses, you are the Son of God. The gap between heaven and earth has not been has been bridged not by a staircase in a dream, but by God himself coming to live on earth. Jesus is the stairway to heaven. He is the one and the only one who can provide contact with and entrance to heaven. He can deliver the life, the power, the vitality of heaven into our lives. Because of Jesus, we become linked, adopted into God's family. Because of Jesus, angels are sent down from heaven to provide protection, care, and direction in our lives as ministering spirits. Hebrews 1:14. That's true for us as individuals. We can try and run through our few years on earth alone, or we can do it connected to heaven. We can affirm our decision to stand beside Nathaniel and Jacob, clinging to the only ladder to heaven. There is a ladder reaching from heaven to earth, earth to heaven. It's secure, and abundant help is available to ascend that ladder. It's handicapped accessible, as I said. It is shaped just like a cross. It is Jesus who meets us at the bottom, and it's Jesus who takes us to the top. Put your faith in him, and you truly will climb Jacob's ladder. And may God add his blessings to his word.